Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that nothing outside your life has suddenly collapsed. You still have the same job, the same responsibilities, the same people around you. But before you even get out of bed, your mind has already returned to yesterday's problem. You replay what went wrong. You imagine what could go wrong next. You think about what someone said, what you should have said, and what you wish you could change. An hour disappears, then another. And here is the frightening part. The problem has not become larger, but inside your mind, it has. Because whatever you repeatedly focus on begins to dominate the way you see your life. This audiobook is about breaking that pattern. You will learn how to stop feeding problems with endless attention, take responsibility for what you can change, control your emotional reactions, and train your mind to search for the next useful step. Because you may not control everything that happens to you, but you can control what you do from here. Chapter 1. Take full responsibility for what happens from now on. There is a difficult truth that can also become one of the most freeing truths you ever accept. No one is coming to take responsibility for your life. People can help you, they can teach you, encourage you, open doors for you, but eventually the decisions that shape your future return to you. This does not mean everything that happened to you was your fault. Some situations were outside your control. Some people may have treated you unfairly. Some opportunities may have disappeared for reasons you could not influence. There is a difference between being responsible for what happened and being responsible for what happens next. And understanding that difference changes everything. Suppose you are unhappy with your work. Every morning, you wake up frustrated. You complain about your boss, the company, your schedule, your salary. You may have legitimate reasons for feeling that way. But imagine repeating those complaints for another year while changing nothing. What will be different? Probably very little. Now imagine asking a different question. What can I do about this? Perhaps you cannot leave immediately, but maybe you can improve a skill, save money, update your resume, look for another opportunity. Speak with someone who can help. Create a plan. The situation has not disappeared, but your position inside it has changed. You are no longer only experiencing the problem, you are beginning to respond to it. Stop giving your power away. Every time you make someone else completely responsible for your future, you hand them power. My life would be better if my boss changed. I would be happier if this person treated me differently. I would succeed if someone gave me an opportunity. Maybe those things would help. But what happens if they never change? Do you remain stuck forever? Responsibility means asking what still belongs to you. Your effort belongs to you. Your preparation belongs to you. Your habits belong to you. Your response belongs to you. Your next decision belongs to you. These may seem like small things compared with a large problem, but they are where progress begins. Blame looks backward. When something goes wrong, the mind naturally wants an explanation. Who caused this? Why did this happen? Who made the mistake? Sometimes those questions matter. You need to understand what happened so it does not happen again. But once the cause is understood, repeating the blame does not automatically produce a solution. Imagine missing an important opportunity because someone failed to give you information on time. You can spend the next week saying, "This was their fault." And perhaps it was. But eventually another question becomes more useful. What can I do now? Can you contact someone? Can you find another opportunity? Can you create a better system so you are less dependent on one person next time? Blame explains the past. Responsibility begins building the future. Your excuses can be true and still keep you stuck. This is where responsibility becomes uncomfortable, because sometimes your reasons are completely real. You really are tired. You really do have limited time. You really may have fewer resources than someone else. You really may have experienced setbacks that made your path harder. You do not need to lie to yourself about those difficulties. But ask, given these circumstances, what is still possible? Maybe you cannot work for 3 hours. Can you work for 30 minutes? Maybe you cannot solve the whole problem this week. Can you solve one part? Maybe you cannot control the person making your situation difficult. Can you change your response? Responsibility does not require perfect circumstances. It begins inside imperfect ones. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Many people secretly believe their real life will begin later, when they have more money, more confidence, more time, more motivation, when the right opportunity appears, when the difficult situation disappears. Then they will finally act. But life rarely becomes perfectly organized before progress begins. Often, progress begins first. You take one imperfect step with the time you have, then another and another. Eventually, those small actions begin changing the circumstances you were waiting to change on their own. Take responsibility for your reaction. You cannot always choose what enters your day. Someone may criticize you, a plan may fail, an unexpected problem may appear. But there is a moment after the event when your response begins. That moment matters. Someone criticizes you. Do you spend the entire day replaying it? Or do you ask whether the criticism contains anything useful? A plan fails. Do you immediately conclude that everything is hopeless? Or do you examine why it failed? A mistake happens. Do you hide from it or correct it? Responsibility is not controlling every event. It is refusing to surrender control of every response. Build structure instead of waiting for motivation. You may know exactly what needs to change, but knowing is not enough. You need structure. Suppose you want to improve a skill. Do not only say, I need to practice more. Decide when, where, for how long. Suppose you constantly procrastinate on an important task. Do not only promise, tomorrow I'll be more disciplined. Decide what you will do first tomorrow and remove the distractions that normally stop you. A vague intention depends heavily on mood. A structure gives your intentions somewhere to live. And when structure begins producing small results, something important happens. You start trusting yourself. Keep small promises to yourself. Confidence does not always begin with believing you can accomplish something enormous. Sometimes it begins with keeping one small promise. You said you would work for 20 minutes. You did. You said you would make the call. You made it. You said you would stop avoiding the conversation. You had it. These moments may seem insignificant, but they create evidence, and evidence changes how you see yourself. Instead of constantly saying, I need to become more disciplined, you begin thinking, I am becoming someone who follows through. Do not try to fix your entire life at once. Responsibility can create urgency. You finally realize that something needs to change, and suddenly you want to change everything. Your routine, your habits, your work, your finances, your relationships, your future. Then the size of the transformation overwhelms you, so simplify it. Ask, what is the most important thing I can take responsibility for today? Maybe it is one task, one decision, one habit, one conversation. Handle that. Tomorrow, handle the next thing. A life can change through decisions that look almost ordinary while you are making them. Stop asking who will save you. At some point, you have to stop waiting for someone to arrive with the perfect answer. Advice can help. Support matters. Good people can make difficult periods easier, but nobody can permanently make your choices for you. And this is actually good news, because if someone else were responsible for creating your future, you would have to wait for them. But if part of the responsibility belongs to you, then part of the power belongs to you too. Start with what you can do today. Look at one problem currently occupying your mind. Do not ask how you can completely eliminate it. Ask something smaller. What can I do today that would make this situation slightly better? Make the call. Write the plan. Learn the skill. Ask for help. Correct the mistake. Remove one distraction. Take one step. Then tomorrow, ask again. Responsibility is rarely one dramatic declaration. It is a pattern. Something happens. You acknowledge reality. You identify what belongs to you. And then you act again and again, until one day you look back and realize that the life you once waited for someone else to change started changing when you stopped waiting. Chapter 2. Train your focus to go where progress can grow. Your attention is constantly feeding something. Every thought you repeat, every problem you replay, every possibility you imagine receives a little more mental energy. And whatever receives enough of that energy begins to feel larger. This is why two people can face similar problems and experience them very differently. One person spends hours asking, "Why is this happening?" The other eventually asks, "What can I do about it?" The problem may be the same, but their attention is moving in completely different directions. Your focus changes what you notice. Imagine that you are struggling financially. If your attention remains fixed only on the problem, your thoughts may sound like this: "I don't have enough money. Everything is getting more expensive. I'll never get ahead." Those concerns may be real, but repeating them does not automatically create a way forward. Now change the question: what can I improve? Suddenly, your mind begins searching differently. Can one unnecessary expense be reduced? Can you learn a skill that increases your opportunities? Can you organize your spending more carefully? Can you create another source of income in the future? The financial problem has not magically disappeared, but your attention is now searching for possibilities instead of repeatedly confirming the difficulty. What you repeat becomes easier to see. Your mind is constantly filtering information. If you repeatedly search for reasons something will fail, you will find them. If you repeatedly search for evidence that people are against you, you will notice every comment that supports that belief. If you constantly tell yourself there are no opportunities, you may stop noticing opportunities that require effort. This does not mean you should ignore risk. It means your focus should not become so narrow that the problem is all you can see. Stop feeding the problem after you understand it. Problems need attention. If something is wrong, you should understand it. What happened? What caused it? What are the consequences? What needs to change? But there is a point where analysis stops producing new information. You already know the problem. You already understand what went wrong. Yet you keep returning to it. That is where thinking can become a trap. Once the problem is understood well enough, redirect your attention toward the response. Notice the questions you ask yourself. Suppose something goes badly at work. You ask, "Why do I always mess things up?" Your mind now has a job. It begins searching through your memory for mistakes. Suddenly, you remember other failures, other embarrassing moments, other times you disappointed yourself. One mistake becomes evidence for an entire negative story. Now change the question: what exactly went wrong, and how can I prevent it next time? The emotional direction changes immediately. You are no longer searching for reasons to attack yourself. You are searching for information. Better questions create better places for your attention to go. Do not let one problem take over everything. A difficult event can easily become the center of your entire day. You have an argument in the morning. Then think about it while eating, while working, while driving, while trying to relax. The argument may have lasted 10 minutes, but your attention gives it 10 hours. Ask yourself, does this problem deserve this much of my day? Sometimes the answer is yes. Some problems are serious and require time, but many do not. They need a response, not your entire mental life. Direct your attention toward what you can influence. Suppose you are waiting for an important decision from someone else. You cannot force their answer, but you keep checking, thinking, predicting, worrying. Your attention is attached to something outside your control. Instead, ask, what can I do while I wait? Maybe prepare for both outcomes. Continue working, explore another option, handle another responsibility. The waiting still exists, but it no longer consumes everything. Your environment directs your focus too. Focus is not only about thoughts. Your surroundings matter. If your phone interrupts you every few minutes, your attention will repeatedly move toward it. If you constantly surround yourself with conversations about problems, complaints, and drama, those subjects will occupy more mental space. If you begin every morning consuming other people's opinions, you may enter the day before deciding what deserves your own attention. Protect your focus. Remove unnecessary interruptions when you need to think. Choose carefully what you consume. Give your best attention to what can actually improve your life. Focus on the next step. A large problem becomes frightening when you try to solve all of it at once. Imagine looking at a goal that may take an entire year. Your mind sees the distance, the uncertainty, everything you still do not know, Then you feel overwhelmed before you begin. Bring your attention closer. What is the next step? Not the entire plan, just the next useful action. Maybe today you need to research something. Tomorrow, make a call, then practice, then adjust. Progress becomes easier when your mind has somewhere specific to go. Do not confuse worry with focus. Worry feels intense. That intensity can make it seem important. But intensity and usefulness are different. You can worry about something for 3 hours and still be no closer to solving it. Useful focus produces clarity or action. It asks, what do I know? What do I need to know? What can I influence? What should I do next? If your thinking produces nothing except more fear, it may no longer be helping you prepare. Train your attention every day. You do not change your focus once and remain perfectly focused forever. Your mind will return to problems. It will replay mistakes. Imagine negative outcomes. Compare. Complain. That is when you redirect it again and again. You notice, I've been thinking about the same problem for 20 minutes. Then ask, is there anything useful I can do? If yes, do it. If not, return your attention to something that matters now. That repeated redirection is the training. Where attention goes, action follows. When your attention stays on excuses, you find more reasons to wait. When it stays on fear, you find more reasons to avoid. When it stays only on the problem begins to feel enormous. But when your attention moves toward what can be learned, changed, tested, or improved, action becomes easier to see. You do not need to pretend difficulties are small. You do not need to force yourself to feel positive. You simply need to stop giving the problem more attention than the solution. Understand what is wrong. Respect the difficulty. Then ask, where can progress grow from here? Put your attention there, because your focus cannot guarantee the outcome, but it can determine whether you spend the next hour feeding the obstacle or building your way around it. Chapter 3, act before fear makes the problem feel too big. Fear has a strange ability to make a small problem feel enormous. You receive one difficult message. You face one uncertain decision. You notice one problem that needs attention. And before you have taken a single step, your mind has already imagined the worst possible ending. What if I fail? What if I make the wrong choice? What if this becomes worse? What if I cannot handle it? The longer you wait, the more powerful those questions become. Soon, you are no longer responding to what is actually happening. You are responding to everything your imagination says might happen. Fear grows in empty space. Imagine discovering a problem with your finances. You know you need to look at the numbers, but you are afraid of what you might find. So you wait, tomorrow, then another day, then another week. During that time, your mind creates possibilities. Maybe the situation is terrible. Maybe you cannot fix it. Maybe everything is worse than you thought. But you still have not looked. This is how avoidance feeds fear. When you refuse to face reality, imagination fills the empty space. And imagination rarely chooses the calmest possibility. Action brings you back to reality. The moment you act, something changes. You check the numbers, make the call, open the email, begin the conversation, ask the question. Now you have information. The problem may still be difficult, but it is no longer completely imaginary. And real information gives you something fear cannot, a place to begin. Do not wait until fear disappears. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing they need confidence before taking action. I'll do it when I feel ready. I'll start when I'm less nervous. I'll make the decision when I'm completely sure. But fear may not disappear first. Sometimes action has to come first. You take the step while still uncertain, then discover that you can handle more than you expected. That experience becomes evidence, and evidence slowly reduces fear. Separate real danger from imagined disaster. Fear is useful when it warns you about genuine risk. If a decision has serious consequences, think carefully, prepare, gather information. Do not rush. But fear can also exaggerate ordinary uncertainty. You have to speak in front of people. Your mind says, I'll embarrass myself. You want to apply for an opportunity. Your mind says, they'll reject me. You need to have an uncomfortable conversation. Your mind says, it will become a disaster. Maybe those things could happen, but possibility is not certainty. Ask, what do I actually know? Then respond to the facts rather than the worst story your mind can create. Make the first step smaller. Sometimes fear comes from looking too far ahead. You think about everything the problem may require, all the work, all the decisions, everything that could go wrong. So reduce the size of the first move. You do not need to solve everything today. You need to begin. If you are afraid of an important conversation, write down what you need to say. If a project feels overwhelming, work on the first part. If you need to change direction, research one option. A small action breaks the feeling that you are completely powerless. Stop rehearsing failure. Your mind can experience failure before anything has happened. You imagine the rejection, the embarrassment, the disappointment, then emotionally react as if it already happened. This creates a dangerous cycle. You imagine failure. Fear increases. You avoid action. Because you avoid action, nothing improves. Then the lack of progress becomes evidence that you should be afraid. Break the cycle with movement. Ask what fear is costing you. Usually, we think about the cost of acting. What if I try and fail? But there is another question. What will happen if I keep avoiding this? What does another month of delay cost? Another year? What opportunity disappears while you wait? What problem becomes harder because you refuse to face it? What skill remains undeveloped because you are afraid of being bad at it? Avoidance has consequences too. Sometimes the risk of doing nothing becomes greater than the risk of trying. Do not let embarrassment control your decisions. A surprising amount of fear comes from imagining other people's reactions. What will they think? What if I look inexperienced? What if they see me fail? But think about how much attention you give to other people's small mistakes. Probably less than they imagine. Most people are busy thinking about themselves. Do not give an imaginary audience control over decisions that shape your actual life. You are allowed to learn. You are allowed to be inexperienced. You are allowed to make an imperfect attempt. Preparation turns fear into work. Suppose you are nervous about an interview. You can spend the evening worrying, or you can prepare. Research, practice your answers, organize what you need. Think about likely questions. The fear may not disappear completely, but now part of your nervous energy has been converted into something useful. Whenever fear appears, ask, is there anything I can prepare? If yes, prepare. Then stop demanding that preparation guarantee the outcome. Your job is to improve your chances, not control everything. A seat on what you know. Sometimes people delay because they do not know the entire path, but you rarely need the entire path to take the next step. Maybe you do not know how the situation will end, but you know you need more information. Get it. You know you need to practice. Practice. You know you need to ask someone. Ask. You know you need to stop avoiding something. Face the first part. Do what you know. The next action often becomes clearer afterward. Courage is practical. Courage does not always look dramatic. Sometimes courage is opening the message you have avoided, admitting you made a mistake, asking for help, trying again, saying, I don't know, starting while you still feel unprepared. These small moments matter because every time you act despite fear, you teach yourself something. Fear can be present without being in control. Do not give fear days to grow. When you know a small action is necessary and safe to take, do not automatically give yourself a week to think about it. Fear uses unnecessary time. It creates more questions, more scenarios, more reasons to wait. Sometimes the most useful response is simple. Take the reasonable first step before your imagination has time to turn it into something enormous. You may still fail. Taking action does not guarantee success. You can prepare and still be rejected. Try and still make a mistake. Take a risk and discover it was not the right direction. But action gives you information. You learn what happened. You adjust. You become more prepared for the next decision. Avoidance gives you very little except continued uncertainty. Fear becomes smaller when you become more capable. You do not need to defeat fear in one dramatic moment. Build your ability to respond. Face small problems earlier. Have difficult conversations sooner. Make decisions with the information available. Correct mistakes instead of hiding them. Each experience teaches you that discomfort can be handled. Eventually, the problem may not become easier. You become stronger at dealing with it. Move before your mind builds a wall. The next time fear begins expanding a problem, notice what is happening. Separate the facts from the imagined outcome. Identify what you can prepare for. Then ask, what is the smallest useful action I can take right now? Take it. Not because you know everything will work, not because you suddenly feel fearless, but because waiting does not always create clarity. Sometimes waiting only gives fear more time to speak. And sometimes the fastest way to discover that a problem is manageable is to stop imagining it from a distance and finally begin dealing with it. Chapter 4. Take full ownership of how you react to setbacks. A setback rarely asks for permission before it arrives. You prepare carefully, you make a plan, you believe things are finally moving in the right direction. Then something changes. A person says no, an opportunity disappears. You make a mistake, a plan that looked solid suddenly fails. And in that moment, you face two problems: the setback itself and the way you choose to react to it. The first may be outside your control. The second is where your responsibility begins. Your first reaction is not always your best response. When something goes wrong, emotion usually arrives before clear thinking: frustration, anger, disappointment, fear. You may immediately think, this is unfair. Everything is ruined. Why does this always happen to me? These thoughts are understandable, but they are not necessarily useful. Give yourself a moment. The event has already happened. Now the important question is, what response will make this situation better rather than worse? Do not turn one setback into 5 more. Imagine receiving bad news at work. You become frustrated. Then carry that frustration into a conversation with someone who had nothing to do with the problem. You speak harshly. Now there is conflict. You go home angry about both situations. You avoid something important because you no longer feel like doing it. By the end of the day, one setback has created several new problems. This happens when we allow the first emotional reaction to choose everything that follows. You may not have created the original difficulty, but you can avoid multiplying it. Accept what has already happened. Acceptance does not mean you like the situation. It does not mean the setback was fair. It means you stop arguing mentally with the fact that it happened. This should not have happened. Perhaps it should not have, but it did. And until you accept that reality, part of your energy remains trapped fighting something that already exists. Acceptance allows the next question to appear. Given that this happened, what do I do now? Do not react while emotion is at its highest. Sometimes the smartest response is no immediate response. You receive an upsetting message. You want to answer instantly. Wait. A plan collapses. You want to make a dramatic decision. Wait. Someone criticizes you. You want to defend yourself before fully understanding what they said. Wait. A short pause can protect you from creating consequences that last much longer than the emotion. You are not avoiding the problem. You are giving yourself enough space to respond deliberately. Separate the event from the story. Something goes wrong. That is the event. Then your mind begins creating a story around it. I knew this would happen. Nothing ever works for me. This proves I'm not capable. That story can become more damaging than the setback itself. Be precise. You did not lose every opportunity. You lost this opportunity. You did not fail at everything. This attempt failed. You did not ruin your entire future. One plan did not work. Accuracy reduces unnecessary emotional weight. Ask what the setback can teach you. Once the emotion settles, investigate. Was there something you missed? Did you prepare enough? Was the plan unrealistic? Did you depend too heavily on something outside your control? Could the problem have been noticed earlier? Sometimes the setback contains valuable information. If you only complain about the result, you may miss the lesson hidden inside it. Take responsibility without attacking yourself. There is a difference between saying, I made a mistake, and I ruin everything. The first creates an opportunity to improve. The second attacks your identity. Responsibility should make you more capable, not more helpless. If the mistake was yours, admit it. Correct what you can. Understand why it happened. Then change something. Punishing yourself repeatedly does not repair the mistake. Learning from it might. Some setbacks are not your fault. You can do everything reasonably well and still receive a disappointing result. Someone else changes their mind. Circumstances shift. An unexpected event interrupts the plan. You cannot control all outcomes. In these situations, responsibility means something different. You stop asking, "How could I have controlled this?" and start asking, "How do I respond now that this has happened?" You do not need to blame yourself for something you could not control in order to take responsibility for your next move. Do not let disappointment become an excuse to stop. A setback can make quitting feel reasonable. You tried, it failed. Why continue? But before walking away, ask, did the goal fail or did this method fail? Those are not the same thing. Perhaps you need a different strategy, more preparation, more time, better information. One unsuccessful approach does not automatically mean the destination is impossible. Control the recovery. You cannot always control whether you fall behind, but you can influence how quickly you return. You lose one productive day. Return tomorrow. A plan fails. Create another. You make a mistake. Correct it as soon as possible. The longer you remain emotionally attached to the setback, the more time it takes from whatever comes next. Recovery is a skill, and like every skill, it becomes stronger through practice. Stop replaying what you cannot change. After something goes wrong, your mind may return to the moment repeatedly. If only I had said this. If only I had noticed earlier. If only I had chosen differently. Reflection can be useful once, maybe twice, but eventually you are no longer learning. You are replaying. Ask, is there anything new to learn from thinking about this again? If not, return your attention to what can still be influenced. Do not make your next decision from revenge or pride. Sometimes setbacks involve other people. Someone rejects you, underestimates you, criticizes you. Your immediate desire may be to prove them wrong. That energy can feel powerful, but be careful about allowing another person's opinion to choose your direction. Do not build your future simply to make someone regret what they did. Choose the next step because it serves your life, not because it satisfies your pride for a few minutes. Look for the opening created by the setback. Not every setback contains a hidden gift. Some situations are simply difficult, but a closed path can sometimes force you to notice another one. A rejected application may lead you to improve your skills. A failed plan may expose a weakness before the consequences become larger. An unexpected change may force you to reconsider a direction you had stopped questioning. You do not need to pretend the setback was wonderful. Simply remain open to what becomes possible next. Your response becomes part of the result. Two people can experience similar setbacks. One spends months repeating what happened. The other feels disappointed too, but eventually asks, "What now?" They learn, adjust, try something else. The difference is not that one person never felt pain. The difference is what happened after the pain. Build a recovery routine. When something goes badly, give yourself a simple process. First, acknowledge what happened. Second, allow the emotion to settle enough for clear thinking. Third, separate what you controlled from what you did not. Fourth, identify the lesson. Then choose the next useful action. This prevents you from remaining trapped between emotion and endless analysis. You are responsible for what happens next. Life will interrupt your plans. That is unavoidable. You will experience delays, rejections, mistakes, unexpected changes. You do not need to smile at every setback. You do not need to pretend it does not hurt. But eventually, the situation will ask something from you. Will you remain focused on what happened, or will you begin deciding what happens next? You may not control the setback. You may not control the people involved. You may not control what has already been lost, but you still have your next decision, your next response, your next action. And sometimes taking ownership of that one small piece is enough to begin moving forward again. Chapter 5. Catch the moment your thinking starts going in circles. There is a point where thinking stops helping you. At first, you are trying to understand the problem. You examine what happened. You consider your options. You think about what you could do differently. That is useful. But But then something changes. You begin repeating the same thoughts again and again and again. You are no longer discovering anything new. You are simply walking around the same mental circle. And because your mind is active, it feels like you are working on the problem, but you are not moving. This is overthinking. Notice when thinking stops producing answers. Imagine you have an important decision to make. You spend an hour considering your options. That may be useful. You compare the risks, think about the consequences, gather information, but then another hour passes, then another. You are still asking the same questions. What if I choose wrong? What if I regret it? What if something unexpected happens? At this point, you may not need more thinking. You may be searching for certainty. And certainty is something many decisions cannot give you. Your mind wants to protect you. Overthinking often begins with a good intention. Your mind wants to prevent mistakes. It wants to protect you from embarrassment, rejection, failure, regret. So it tries to predict everything. It imagines one outcome, then another, then another. But eventually, preparation turns into paralysis. You become so focused on avoiding the wrong decision that you stop making any decision at all. Learn to recognize the loop. A thinking loop usually has a familiar feeling. You have already asked the question. You have already imagined the outcome. You have already reviewed the conversation. But your mind says, one more time. Maybe you replay what someone said, then imagine what they meant. Then wonder what you should have said. Then return to the beginning. Nothing new enters the conversation, only repetition. When you notice this, say to yourself, I am not solving this anymore. I am repeating it. That awareness can interrupt the cycle. Stop trying to rewrite the past. One of the most common thinking loops begins with, I should have. I should have answered differently. I should have noticed earlier. I should have made another choice. Looking back can teach you something. But once the lesson is clear, repeatedly returning to the moment cannot change it. Ask, what would I do differently next time? Write down the answer if necessary. Then let the past remain where it belongs. A lesson can move forward with you. The event cannot. Do not solve problems that do not exist yet. Overthinking often sends you into the future. You have a conversation tomorrow. Tonight you imagine 10 ways it could go wrong. But none of those conversations has happened. You are emotionally reacting to possibilities. Prepare for what is reasonable. Know what you want to say. Think about the important facts. Then stop. If a new problem actually appears tomorrow, you can deal with it tomorrow. You do not need to experience every possible difficulty in advance. Ask whether more thinking will change the decision. This is a useful question. If I think about this for another hour, will I have new information? If the answer is yes, continue. Maybe the decision genuinely requires research. Maybe you are missing something important. But if the answer is no, another hour may only produce more anxiety. Sometimes the next useful step is not another thought. It is a decision. Put the problem on paper. Thoughts can feel enormous when they remain inside your head. Write them down. What exactly is the problem? What are the facts? What are you assuming? What options do you have? What can you control? What information is missing? Once the problem becomes visible on paper, it often becomes more specific. And specific problems are easier to work with than vague anxiety. Separate facts from stories. Suppose someone has not responded to you. Fact, they have not responded. Story, they are angry with me. They are ignoring me. I must have done something wrong. They don't respect me. Maybe one of those explanations is correct. But you do not know yet. Overthinking often begins when assumptions are treated like facts. Ask, what do I actually know? Then work from there. Give thinking a time limit. Some problems deserve serious thought. Give them serious thought. But create a boundary. Maybe you spend 30 minutes reviewing the decision. Maybe you give yourself until tomorrow morning. Gather what you need, then choose. Without a limit, the mind can always invent another possibility, another question, another reason to delay. A deadline for thinking can prevent analysis from becoming avoidance. Do something physical and simple. Sometimes you cannot think your way out of overthinking. Your mind is too activated. Step away. Walk, organize something, drink some water. Take a short break from the environment where you have been sitting and repeating the same thoughts. You are not escaping the problem. You are creating enough distance for your mind to reset. When you return, the situation may look less overwhelming. Do not ask 10 people for the same answer. When uncertain, advice can be useful, but overthinking can turn advice into another loop. You ask one person, they give you an answer. You are still uncertain, so you ask another, then another. Now you have 5 different opinions and even less clarity. Choose people whose judgment you respect. Listen. Then remember that eventually you must make the decision. That more opinions do not always create more certainty. Accept that some decisions will feel uncertain. There may be no perfect answer. Both options may contain risk. You may not know exactly how things will turn out. This is normal. The goal is not always to become completely certain. Sometimes the goal is to make the best decision available with the information you have. Then respond intelligently to whatever happens next. Turn thinking into a next step. When you notice yourself looping, ask, what action would give me new information? If you are wondering whether an idea will work, test a small version. If you are worried about a conversation, have it when appropriate. If you do not understand something, ask. If you are uncertain about your ability, practice. Action often answers questions that thought cannot. Stop demanding a guarantee. You want someone to tell you, yes, this will definitely work. But many meaningful choices come without guarantees. A new opportunity, a difficult conversation, a change in direction, a goal that matters. You can prepare carefully and still face uncertainty. At some point, you have to trust your ability to respond if things do not go perfectly. Notice the cost of overthinking. Overthinking does not only consume time, it consumes energy. You can spend an entire evening thinking about something and wake up mentally tired even though you took no action. Meanwhile, the problem remains. Ask yourself, how much energy am I willing to give this before I either act or let it go for now? Your attention is limited. Do not allow one unresolved question to consume everything else. Create a simple ending. When you have thought enough, end the mental meeting. Tell yourself, I have considered what I know. This is the decision I am making. Or, there is nothing useful I can do until I receive more information. Then return to your day. Your mind may try to reopen the subject. Remind it, we have already dealt with this for now. Think to move, not to stay. Thinking is one of your greatest tools. It helps you understand, prepare, plan, learn. But a tool becomes a trap when you use it without knowing when to stop. The purpose of thinking about a problem is not to remain mentally attached to it forever. The purpose is to reach greater clarity about what comes next. So when your thoughts begin going in circles, notice the repetition. Separate facts from assumptions. Identify what you can control. Decide whether more information is actually needed. Then take the next useful step. Because sometimes the solution to overthinking is not finding one more answer. It is realizing that you already have enough information and giving yourself permission to move. Chapter 6. Create space to think instead of rushing into panic. A problem appears, and within seconds your mind demands an answer. Fix it now. Respond now. Decide now. Something feels wrong, and suddenly everything seems urgent. Your heart races. Your thoughts accelerate. You imagine consequences before you fully understand what has happened. And in that state, the desire to escape the discomfort can become stronger than the desire to make a good decision. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is not react faster. It is create enough space to think clearly. Panic makes everything feel urgent. Imagine receiving an unexpected message about a serious problem at work. You read it once. Your mind immediately jumps ahead. What if I lose this opportunity? What if they blame me? What if this becomes much worse? You begin preparing a response before you even know the full situation. Then, 20 minutes later, you discover that part of what you assumed was wrong. The problem was real, but panic added information that never existed. This happens because emotion moves faster than careful reasoning. When something feels threatening, your mind wants immediate certainty, but immediate certainty is not always available. Pause before you add another problem. A difficult situation already gives you enough to handle. Do not create another problem through an impulsive reaction. You receive criticism and immediately attack back. Now you have criticism and conflict. You make a mistake and immediately try to hide it. Now you have the mistake and the consequences of hiding it. You hear bad news and make a dramatic decision before understanding what happened. Now you may have created a decision you need to undo later. A pause can prevent one problem from multiplying. Create distance from the first emotion. The first emotion you feel may be powerful. Anger says, respond. Fear says, escape. Embarrassment says, hide. But you do not have to obey the first instruction your emotion gives you. Notice it. I am angry. I am afraid. I feel embarrassed. Naming the emotion creates a small distance between you and the reaction. You are no longer only inside the feeling. You are observing it. And that gives you more room to choose. Get the facts before you decide. Panic loves incomplete information. When you do not know something, your mind tries to fill the gap, usually with a frightening possibility. Someone asks to speak with you. You assume something is wrong. A plan changes unexpectedly. You assume everything is ruined. Before reacting, ask, what do I actually know? Then, what am I assuming? These two questions can completely change the way you see the situation. Slow down the decision. Not every problem needs an answer in the next 5 minutes. Some do. Most do not. When possible, give yourself time. Say, let me think about that. I need to understand the situation first. I'll respond after I have looked at the information. These simple sentences protect you from making decisions simply because another person or your own emotions created pressure. Do not confuse speed with strength. Fast reactions can look confident. Someone challenges you and you answer immediately. Something goes wrong and you make a decision instantly. But speed is not always strength. Sometimes strength is being comfortable enough to pause, to admit, I don't know yet, to gather information, to think before speaking. A calm response may take longer, but it can save you from spending days repairing an impulsive one. Return your attention to the present. Panic usually lives in the future. What if this happens? And then what if that happens? Soon, one problem has become a chain of imagined disasters. Bring yourself back. What is happening right now? What problem actually exists at this moment? What needs your attention first? You do not need to solve the fifth imaginary problem before you have dealt with the first real one. Break the problem into pieces. Large problems create panic because your mind tries to hold everything at once. Instead, divide the situation. What needs immediate attention? What can wait? What information is missing? Who needs to be contacted? What can you control? Now the problem begins to have structure, and structure makes action easier. Do not make important decisions at the peak of emotion. You are furious and decide to quit, terrified and decide to abandon the opportunity, embarrassed and decide never to try again. Give major decisions enough time for the emotional intensity to decrease when circumstances allow. You may still choose the same thing later, but there is a difference between I chose this after thinking clearly and I chose this because I needed the feeling to stop. One is a decision. The other may simply be an escape. Use simple actions to restore control. When a problem feels overwhelming, you may not need the complete solution immediately. You need the first stable step. Write down what happened. Gather the documents. Make the necessary call. Ask the important question. Create a short list of options. One clear action can interrupt panic because it moves your attention from imagination toward reality. Give your mind quiet. Sometimes clear thinking requires temporarily stepping away from noise, not escaping the problem for days, just creating enough distance to think. Put the phone down. Leave the conversation for a short period if appropriate. Sit somewhere quiet. Walk. Write. Constant input makes it difficult to hear your own reasoning. A few quiet minutes can reveal that the situation is different from the version panic created. Ask what would actually help. When emotion is high, ask, what would help this situation right now? Not, what would make me feel powerful for 10 seconds? Not, what response would hurt the other person? Not, what decision would let me escape immediately? What would actually help? Maybe the answer is a conversation, maybe more information, maybe an apology, maybe waiting, maybe taking action. This question brings purpose back into the response. Calm does not mean passive. Creating space does not mean refusing to act. Some situations require quick action. The point is to act from the clearest state available. You can be calm and decisive, calm and firm, calm and fast. Panic is not required for urgency. In fact, clear thinking often allows you to respond faster because you are not wasting energy on 10 imagined outcomes. Practice the pause before you need it. Do not wait for a major crisis to learn how to pause. Practice during ordinary moments. Someone says something irritating. Pause before answering. A small plan changes. Pause before complaining. You receive unexpected information. Pause before deciding what it means. These small moments train a larger skill. You are teaching yourself that an event can happen without immediately controlling your behavior. You do not need every answer right now. Uncertainty can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is not an emergency. Sometimes the information you need will arrive tomorrow. Sometimes another person needs time. Sometimes you need to sleep before deciding. You can say, "I do not know yet," and still remain in control. Not knowing for a moment is often safer than forcing a bad answer simply because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. Make space between the problem and your response. A problem happens. Then there is a space, sometimes only a few seconds. Inside that space, you can ask, what are the facts? What am I assuming? What can I control? What response would actually help? Use that space, because you may not control the moment that creates the problem, but you can become better at controlling the moment that follows it. And often, that is where the difference is made. Not in preventing every difficult situation from appearing, but in refusing to let panic decide what happens next. Chapter 7. Ask yourself, what would actually help right now? When something goes wrong, your mind can produce dozens of thoughts in seconds. This is terrible. I can't believe this happened. Why did they do that? What if it gets worse? But there is one question that can cut through all of that noise. What would actually help right now? It sounds simple, but this question forces your attention away from emotional repetition and towards something useful. Because knowing that a problem exists is only the beginning. The real change starts when you identify what the situation needs from you. Not every problem needs the same response. Sometimes the answer is action. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes you need information. Sometimes you need to speak. Sometimes you need to stop speaking and listen. Sometimes you need help, and sometimes there is nothing useful you can do yet. The mistake is assuming that every uncomfortable situation requires immediate action. A useful response depends on what the problem actually needs. Start with the real problem. Imagine you are constantly stressed about work. You tell yourself, "My job is ruining my life." That feeling may be real, but the problem is still too broad. What exactly is happening? Are you working too many hours? Is one specific responsibility overwhelming you? Do you lack a skill that would make the work easier? Is there conflict with someone? Are you simply exhausted? Until the problem becomes specific, the solution remains difficult to see. Instead of saying, "Everything is wrong," ask, "What exactly needs attention first?" Do not choose what feels good for 5 minutes. A useful response and a satisfying response are not always the same. You are angry with someone. Sending an aggressive message may feel satisfying immediately, but will it help? You are overwhelmed by an important task. Avoiding it may make you feel better tonight, but will it help tomorrow? You receive criticism. Arguing with every point may protect your pride, but will it improve anything? Ask yourself, what action helps the situation? Not just my emotion? Sometimes you need information before action. A problem appears and you immediately want to fix it, but perhaps you do not understand it yet. Slow down. What information is missing? Who knows more about this than you? What assumptions are you making? A few minutes spent understanding the situation can prevent hours spent solving the wrong problem. Good solutions begin with accurate information. Ask for help when help is the solution. Being responsible does not mean doing everything alone. Sometimes you are stuck because you do not know something. Ask. Ask. Maybe someone has already solved a similar problem. Maybe they can see something you cannot. Maybe you need expertise rather than more private thinking. Asking for help does not remove your responsibility. You still have to decide what to do with the information you receive. Do not ask for advice when you already know the answer. There is another side to this. Sometimes you ask people for advice because you hope someone will give you permission to avoid the difficult action you already know is necessary. You know you need to begin. You know you need to apologize. You know you need to stop a harmful habit. You know you need to have the conversation. But instead of acting, you keep asking, what do you think I should do? Be honest. Are you missing information? Or are you delaying something uncomfortable? Solve the next part, not everything. Imagine facing a problem with 10 different pieces. If you try to solve all 10 at once, you may become overwhelmed. Choose the first piece. What would make the situation slightly better? Perhaps you need to organize the information. Make one phone call, finish one task, set one boundary, save a small amount. Practice one skill. Small solutions are not meaningless simply because they do not solve everything. They create movement. Use what is available now. Sometimes you postpone action because you are waiting for better resources. More money, more time, more knowledge, more support. Those things may genuinely help later. But ask, what can I do with what I have now? Maybe the answer is limited. That is okay. A limited action today can create better options tomorrow. Stop searching for perfect solutions. You may have several possible responses, none of them ideal. One requires more effort. Another takes longer. Another involves an uncomfortable conversation. So you keep searching for an option with no downside. But some problems do not offer perfect choices. Sometimes maturity means choosing the most useful option available, even when it is imperfect. The goal is not always, what solves everything? Sometimes it is, what moves this in a better direction? Know when the solution is acceptance. Not every situation can be repaired. A past decision cannot be undone. Another person's choice may be final. An opportunity may truly be gone. In those moments, continuing to search for a way to change what cannot be changed becomes another form of suffering. The useful response may be acceptance. Not because you like what happened, because you recognize where your influence ends. Then your attention can move toward what still remains possible. Do not confuse doing more with helping more. When something matters to you, your instinct may be to do everything possible. More calls, more thinking, more effort, more advice. But sometimes more activity creates more confusion. Ask, what is the minimum useful action required right now? Do that first, then observe. You do not need to exhaust yourself to prove that you care about solving the problem. Notice when rest is the useful response. You are exhausted. Your thinking is becoming worse. Every small difficulty feels enormous, yet you keep forcing yourself to solve the problem. Sometimes what would actually help is stepping away temporarily. Rest, sleep, return with a clearer mind. Rest is not always avoidance. When used deliberately, it can be preparation for better thinking. Turn the question into a habit. Something goes wrong. What would actually help right now? You feel overwhelmed. What would actually help right now? You are angry. What would actually help right now? You are stuck. Ask again. Eventually, this question begins interrupting old patterns. Complaining becomes action. Panic becomes assessment. Overthinking becomes a decision. Frustration becomes curiosity. Do the useful thing even when it is not the easy thing. Sometimes the answer will be uncomfortable. Tell the truth. Admit the mistake. Ask for help. Begin the work. Set the boundary. Wait patiently. Try again. The useful response does not always feel good immediately, but it improves what happens next. And that is the point. You do not need to solve your entire future today. You only need to respond intelligently to what is in front of you. Look at the situation. Separate the facts from the emotion. Identify what you can influence. Then ask, what would actually help right now? Find the answer. Do what you can. Then allow the next step to reveal itself. Because when life becomes complicated, you do not always need a brilliant solution. Sometimes you simply need to stop feeding the problem and do the next thing that genuinely helps. Chapter 8. Replace complaining with one simple action every day. Complaining feels productive because you are talking about the problem. You describe what is wrong, why it is unfair, what someone else should have done, why your circumstances make progress difficult. And for a moment, talking about it can feel good. But when the conversation ends, ask yourself one question: what actually changed? Usually, nothing. The problem is still waiting for you. This is why one of the most powerful habits you can build is simple. Whenever you catch yourself repeatedly complaining about something, connect that complaint to one useful action. Complaints can reveal what needs to change. Complaining is not always meaningless. Sometimes it gives you information. I never have enough time. That tells you time needs attention. I am always distracted. That tells you your environment or habits may need attention. I hate being behind financially. That tells you something about your money needs to be examined. The complaint can identify the problem, but once the problem is identified, repeating the complaint does not create more clarity. Now you need another question. What can I change? Turn words into movement. Imagine complaining every evening that you never have enough time to finish important work. You repeat it for weeks, but your routine stays exactly the same. Now try something different. Instead of saying, I never have enough time, choose one action. Tomorrow, protect 30 minutes for the most important task before doing something less important. That may not solve your entire schedule, but something has changed. You have moved from describing the problem to testing a solution. Do not wait for a big action. People often underestimate small actions because they do not feel dramatic. You want to improve your finances, so you imagine needing a completely new income. You want to improve your health, so you imagine transforming your entire routine. You want to become more productive, so you imagine rebuilding your whole schedule. Then the size of the change makes you delay. Instead, ask, what is one action I can repeat? Small actions become powerful when they continue long enough. Use complaints as triggers. Try creating a simple rule. Whenever you hear yourself complaining about the same issue again, stop. Then ask, what action belongs with this complaint? You complain about being disorganized. Organize one thing. You complain about not understanding something. Spend time learning it. You complain about a misunderstanding. Communicate. You complain about having too much to do. Choose the most important task and begin. The complaint becomes a signal to move. Stop waiting for other people to change first. Some complaints are focused entirely on other people. They never listen. They never help. They should understand. Maybe you are right, but if your solution requires another person to become completely different before your life can improve, you may wait for a very long time. Ask, what can I do from my side? Maybe you need to communicate more clearly. Make a direct request. Create a boundary. Change your expectations. Or stop investing so much energy in something you cannot control. You cannot always change another person, but you can change how you deal with the situation. Do not turn complaining into your identity. Be careful when the same negative story becomes part of how you describe your life. Nothing ever works for me. I'm always unlucky. People always disappoint me. The more often you repeat these statements, the more permanent they begin to feel. Describe the situation more accurately. This did not work. This person disappointed me. This week has been difficult. Specific problems can be addressed. Permanent negative identities make action feel pointless. One action can change your emotional state. Imagine sitting for an hour worrying about everything you need to do. You feel overwhelmed because the list keeps growing inside your mind. Then you choose one task and complete it. The entire problem is not solved, but you feel different. Why? Because action restores a sense of movement. You are no longer only experiencing the problem, you are influencing it. That feeling matters. Do not complain about results while protecting the habits that create them. You say you want better results, but you refuse to change the routine producing your current results. You complain about being distracted, but keep every distraction beside you. You complain about never having enough time, but continue giving hours to things that do not matter. You complain about slow progress, but repeatedly stop when motivation disappears. At some point, you have to ask, what am I willing to do differently? A different result usually requires a different behavior. Action creates information. Suppose you are uncertain about a solution. You can continue thinking about whether it will work, or you can test a small version. Take one reasonable step. Observe what happens. If it works, continue. If it does not, adjust. Either way, you now know more than you knew before. Complaining repeats information you already have. Action creates new information. Do not expect immediate results. You take one action today. Tomorrow, the problem may still exist. That does not mean the action was useless. Many problems were created gradually. They may also need to be solved gradually. One day of discipline will not transform your life. One productive morning will not repair months of delay. One better decision will not instantly erase every consequence of previous decisions. But repeated action begins changing direction, and direction matters before results become visible. Make progress measurable. Instead of saying, I need to do better, choose something you can actually see. One task completed, 30 minutes practiced. One application sent. One difficult conversation handled. One unnecessary expense removed. When action becomes specific, progress becomes easier to recognize. And visible progress gives you a reason to continue. Some days the action will be very small. There will be days when you have less energy, less time, more responsibilities. Do not use an imperfect day as a reason to do nothing. If you cannot take the full step, take a smaller one. The goal is not maximum effort every day. The goal is maintaining the habit of responding to problems with movement rather than endless complaint. You are training a new default response. At first, this may feel unnatural. Something goes wrong and you automatically complain. Then you remember, what can I do? You take one action. The next time, you remember faster. Eventually, something changes. A problem appears and your mind begins looking for the response almost immediately. You still feel frustrated. You still notice what is wrong, but you do not remain there as long. You begin moving sooner. One action a day is enough to change direction. You do not need to solve everything tonight. You do not need to become a completely different person tomorrow morning. Choose one problem, then choose one useful action connected to it. Do it. Tomorrow, repeat the process. One action, then another, then another. Weeks later, those actions begin forming a pattern, and patterns create results. Complaining asks the world to become different. Action asks, what can I do differently? That question gives you somewhere to go. So the next time you hear yourself repeating the same complaint, do not attack yourself for it. Use it. Let the complaint identify what needs attention. Then stop talking about the problem for a moment and take one simple action that moves you closer to the solution. Chapter 9. Calm your emotions so your choices stay clear. A problem happens in seconds, but one emotional reaction can create consequences that last much longer. Someone says something that makes you angry. You respond immediately. A situation frightens you. You make a decision just to escape the uncertainty. Something disappoints you. You decide there is no point continuing. Then the emotion becomes quieter, and suddenly you see the situation differently. This is why solving problems is not only about thinking better. It is also about learning how to remain clear enough to choose your response. Emotions are real, but they are not always instructions. Anger tells you to react. Fear tells you to escape. Frustration tells you to give up. Embarrassment tells you to hide. But feeling something strongly does not automatically mean you should obey it. Your emotions can contain useful information. Anger may show you that a boundary has been crossed. Fear may show you that something feels uncertain. Disappointment may show you how much something mattered. Listen to the information, but do not automatically follow the impulse. Create a gap before you respond. Imagine receiving a message that makes you furious. Your first instinct is to answer immediately. You begin typing. You want to explain why they are wrong. You want them to understand exactly how angry you are. But before sending anything, stop. Give yourself time. 10 minutes, 30 minutes, longer if necessary. When you return, you may still disagree. You may still need to respond. But now you have a better chance of choosing words that solve something instead of creating another problem. The pause does not make you weak. It gives you options. Name what you are actually feeling. Sometimes the emotion you notice first is not the real one underneath. You think you are angry, but perhaps you are disappointed. You think you are frustrated, but perhaps you are afraid of failing. You think someone has offended you, but perhaps their words touched an insecurity you were already carrying. Ask, what exactly am I feeling? Then, what is causing it? When you understand the emotion more clearly, the problem often becomes easier to understand too. Separate what happened from what you think it means. Someone does not respond to you. That is what happened. Then your mind says, they are ignoring me. They do not respect me. I must have done something wrong. Those are interpretations. They may be correct. They may not. But if you react emotionally to an assumption as though it were a fact, you can create conflict around something you never confirmed. Before reacting, ask, what do I actually know? This simple question protects clear thinking. Do not make big decisions from a temporary state. One difficult day can make your entire future look different. You feel exhausted and suddenly think you should quit. You have one argument and decide the relationship cannot work. You fail once and decide the goal was a mistake. Be careful. Strong emotions narrow your perspective. They make the current moment feel permanent. When possible, allow the emotion to settle before making decisions with long-term consequences. You may eventually reach the same conclusion, but now the decision comes from clarity rather than emotional urgency. Anger can make winning feel more important than solving conflict. During an argument, your goal can quietly change. At first, you want to solve the problem. Then you want to prove you are right. Then you want the other person to admit they were wrong. Now the conversation is no longer about the original issue. It is about winning. Ask yourself, what outcome do I actually want from this conversation? If you want understanding, speak toward understanding. If you need a boundary, communicate the boundary. If you made a mistake, admit it. Do not sacrifice the solution simply to satisfy your pride. Fear needs facts. Fear often speaks in possibilities. What if this fails? What if everything becomes worse? What if I cannot handle it? Instead of arguing with the fear, give it something concrete to work with. What is the actual risk? How likely is it? What can you prepare for? What would you do if the problem occurred? Once fear becomes specific, you can begin turning it into preparation. Vague fear grows. Specific problems can be examined. Do not try to remove every uncomfortable feeling. You are not supposed to feel calm every second of your life. Some situations are difficult. Some conversations will make you nervous. Some setbacks will hurt. Some decisions will create uncertainty. Emotional control does not mean becoming emotionless. It means being able to feel discomfort without allowing that discomfort to choose every action. You can be afraid and still prepare, angry and still speak carefully, disappointed and still continue, uncertain and still make a thoughtful decision. Notice when your physical state is making everything worse. Sometimes a problem feels much larger because you are exhausted. You have been working for hours. You have not rested. Your mind is overloaded. Then one small difficulty appears and suddenly feels impossible. Before making a dramatic conclusion, ask, am I in a good state to judge this clearly? Sometimes the problem needs a solution. Sometimes you need enough rest to see the solution. Stop replaying the emotion. The argument ended 3 hours ago, but in your mind, it is still happening. You replay their words, then your response. Then imagine a better response. Every replay produces another emotional reaction. Ask, is there anything useful left for me to do? If you need another conversation, have it when appropriate. If you need to apologize, apologize. If you learned something, keep the lesson. But if there is no useful action left, continuing the argument inside your head does not solve anything. Do not treat feelings as proof. I feel like I'm going to fail. That is a feeling, not a prediction. I feel like everyone is judging me. That does not mean everyone is. I feel like I cannot handle this. That does not prove you cannot. Respect your emotions without automatically treating them as evidence. Ask what the facts say too. Choose the response you will respect later. When emotion is strong, ask, what response will I respect tomorrow? Will you respect sending that message? Will you respect quitting in this moment? Will you respect saying those words? Will you respect avoiding the problem again? This question moves your attention beyond immediate emotional relief. You begin thinking about consequences, and that creates space for a wiser choice. You will not handle every moment perfectly. Sometimes you will react too quickly, say something poorly, allow fear to influence you, become frustrated. That does not mean you failed at emotional control forever. Recognize what happened, correct it if necessary. Learn what triggered the reaction, then try to handle the next situation better. Emotional control grows through repeated correction, not perfection. Calm creates better options. When your emotions settle, you begin seeing choices that were invisible before. You can communicate instead of attack, prepare instead of panic, wait instead of rushing, adjust instead of quitting, ask instead of assuming. That is why calm matters. Not because every problem disappears when you become calm, but because a calmer mind is more capable of seeing what can actually be done. Feel first, then choose. The next time a strong emotion appears, do not pretend it is not there. Notice it, name it, understand what triggered it, separate the facts from the story. Then ask, what response would actually help? You cannot prevent every emotion, and you should not try. But you can become better at deciding what happens after the emotion arrives. Because the strongest person in the room is not always the one who reacts fastest. Sometimes it is the person who can feel everything happening inside them and still choose clearly what to do next. Chapter 10. Keep going, even when your results feel too slow. There is a moment when many people quit. Not at the beginning. At the beginning, motivation is high. The goal feels exciting. You imagine what life could look like if everything works. You begin taking action. One day, 1 week, maybe several weeks. But then you look at the results, and they are smaller than you expected. You have been trying, but nothing seems to be changing fast enough. That is when doubt begins. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I'm wasting my time. Maybe I should stop. But slow progress is still progress. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is continue long enough for your actions to finally become visible. Results often arrive after the effort. Think about learning a new skill. During the first few days, you may feel almost no improvement. You make mistakes. You forget what you learned. Everything requires concentration. But something is happening beneath the surface. Your mind is adapting. Patterns are becoming familiar. You are building experience. Then one day, something that once required enormous effort becomes easier. The improvement did not appear overnight. You simply reached the point where repeated effort became visible. Do not judge a long-term process too early. Imagine planting something and digging it up every few days to check whether the roots are growing. You would destroy the very process you are trying to measure. People sometimes do the same thing with their goals. They begin, then constantly ask, is it working yet? Am I successful yet? Why am I not further ahead? Some results need time. Your responsibility is to make sure the process is reasonable, then give it enough consistency to work. Focus on what you can repeat. You cannot control exactly when a result arrives, but you can control whether you continue taking useful actions. If you are learning, keep practicing. If you are building something, keep improving it. If you are trying to change a habit, return to the habit. If one strategy clearly fails, adjust it. The goal is not blind persistence. It is consistent effort combined with intelligent correction. Do not let other people's speed discourage you. You see someone who started later and progressed faster. Someone appears more successful, more confident, further ahead. Immediately, your own progress begins to feel smaller, but you do not know their entire situation, their experience, resources, timing, advantages, previous failures. Comparing your middle with someone else's visible result can make real progress feel like failure. Return to your own path. Are you moving? Are you learning? Are you improving your process? Those questions are more useful. Look for small evidence. When progress is slow, your mind tends to notice what has not happened. You have not reached the goal. You are not where you want to be. But look more carefully. Are you more consistent than before? Do you understand something you did not understand a month ago? Are you making fewer mistakes? Are you recovering faster when something goes wrong? These changes matter. Small evidence can show you that the process is working before the final result arrives. Do not confuse slow progress with no progress. There is an important difference. Slow progress means movement exists. No progress may mean the strategy needs to change. Be honest enough to distinguish between them. If you have been repeating the same action for months and nothing is improving, do not simply tell yourself to work harder forever. Study the process. Ask for feedback. Change the method. Improve the skill. Persistence is valuable when it keeps you moving toward a solution. It becomes useless when it prevents you from admitting that the strategy needs adjustment. Expect the middle to feel boring. Beginnings are exciting. Endings are rewarding. The middle often contains repetition. You do the same useful things without applause. No dramatic breakthrough, no sudden transformation, just another day of showing up. This is where consistency becomes more important than motivation. If you can continue through the ordinary middle, you give yourself a chance to reach the result that excitement alone could never produce. Stop needing daily proof. Some days will feel productive, others will not. You may work hard and see no immediate result. That does not mean the day was wasted. Not every useful action produces instant feedback. Judge the direction over a meaningful period of time, not every few hours. Otherwise, your emotions will constantly change based on tiny fluctuations. Adjust without abandoning everything. Suppose something is not working. You do not always need to destroy the entire plan. Maybe one part needs changing. Maybe you need a different schedule, more practice, better information, a smaller goal, a stronger system. Learn to adjust without automatically starting from zero. Sometimes progress depends on correcting the path, not abandoning the destination. Remember why you started. When results are slow, reconnect with the reason the goal mattered. Why did you begin? What problem were you trying to solve? What kind of life were you trying to create? Your reason will not remove every difficult day, but it can remind you that temporary frustration is not the whole story. You began because something mattered enough to change. Do not forget that simply because change is taking longer than expected. Do not make a permanent decision on a bad day. There will be days when you are tired. Nothing seems to work. You question the entire goal. Be careful about deciding your future from that temporary state. Rest if necessary. Review the plan, then look again. Sometimes what feels impossible at night looks manageable the next morning. Measure direction, not perfection. Ask yourself, am I moving in a better direction than before? You may still have problems, still make mistakes, still lose focus occasionally, but perhaps you recover faster, complain less, take responsibility sooner, think more clearly before reacting. Those changes are evidence that your mindset is changing. And that matters because the goal was never to create a life where nothing goes wrong. The goal was to become better at responding when it does. The solution-focused mind is built through repetition. Throughout this audiobook, one idea has appeared again and again. You cannot control everything, but you can keep returning your attention to what you can influence. Take responsibility for what happens next. Direct your focus toward progress. Act before fear grows. Choose your risk to setbacks. Catch overthinking before it becomes a loop. Create space before panic chooses for you. Ask what would actually help. Replace complaining with action. Calm your emotions before making important choices. And when progress feels slow, keep moving intelligently. You will still have difficult days. There will still be moments when you complain, overthink, react emotionally, avoid something, lose focus. That does not erase your progress. Catch yourself sooner, return sooner. Ask the useful questions sooner. What can I do from here? That question can become a way of living. Keep moving. You do not need to know exactly where every decision will lead. You do not need to solve every problem today. You do not need perfect confidence, perfect circumstances, or perfect motivation. You need the next useful step, then another. When something fails, learn. When something changes, adapt. When fear appears, return to the facts. When you cannot control the outcome, control your preparation and your response. And when progress feels painfully slow, remember, a slow step in the right direction still changes where you will eventually arrive. Your life will never be completely free of problems, but your problems do not have to control your attention, your choices, or your future. Focus on what can be changed, accept what cannot, and keep moving toward the solution. One decision, one action, one day at a time.